If Catholic mass attendances are anything to go by, traditional organised religions hold less appeal for people as more and more turn away from the prayers and beliefs they were reared on. But in the absence of religion, where, to whom or to what do people turn to seek comfort when times are tough? Where, in other words, do we find solace in a secular world? Well, to discuss this in studio, I am joined by Pat Storey, Church of Ireland Bishop of Meath and Kildare. Also here, Michael Nugent, Chairperson of Atheist Ireland. And on the line from County Clare, Father Harry Bohan, Parish Priest in 6 Mile Bridge. Good morning to you all. Michael Nugent, first of all, atheism seems to be growing. Is that as a result of maybe people becoming more prosperous despite the setbacks of recent years economically?
It is. Well, atheism and secularism are growing around the world. Throughout the world, and you're right, it is where people move away from survival values towards self-expression values. That shifts societies away from traditional religious values and towards secular rational values. That's happening around the world. It's a positive thing. In secular countries, particularly secular democracies, people are more tolerant, they're less judgmental, less homophobic, less racist, less bigoted, and have more positive life outcomes, less serious crimes, less teenage pregnancies, less abortions, etc.
Harry Bohan, there's a lot there, but you may well agree that there is increasing atheism, increasing secularisation, but do you think it's a good thing? A positive thing, as Michael says?
Well, if there's no doubt it's there, Sean, and I suppose the way I look at things now is, I suppose Ireland at the moment is very definitely at a crossroads. We have had generations of people who were attached in a very special way to religion. And I suppose the challenge now for that is that, and the one we would be trying to focus on, is an engaged Christianity. In other words, we have a long and proud tradition of community activity in Ireland, and we take great pride in our origins and our sense of loyalty to the people and place from which we come. And that's very often expressed in concern and support for one another. So I think a lot of the solace and the comfort that you're talking about now can come from community. And within that, the Christianity must now reach out to people, foster that community and engage with the reality of people's lives.
We'll come back on some of those things in a few minutes, Father Harry. But Bishop Pat Storey, is it your experience as well that there is this less reliance on, I suppose, organised religion, to use that loose term, and what are people putting in its place?
Good morning, Sean. Thanks for having me on. I think it's debatable. I think that actually in the last census, Church of Ireland numbers were slightly up. And I think I would actually argue with the fact that people are leaving prayers and beliefs behind. You can leave institutionalised church behind and still retain prayers and beliefs, I think. And I think there are all sorts of wee Christian communities springing up all over the place. And actually, I attended one yesterday morning because I just wanted to go and see what was happening at them. And I truly believe that there's still a longing for something beyond ourselves, and that can be manifested in all sorts of different ways. But people still are certainly clinging to the rituals of church. Whether, regular attendance is reflecting that is another matter. But I really do still think that people are deeply spiritual and looking for something beyond themselves.
I suppose the big question is where do people turn when something really dreadful happens in their lives, Michael? Now, I think you had the very sad experience of losing your wife just a few years ago at a very young age. So how did you handle that in the absence of a belief in God?
Well,
and she as well, indeed.
Exactly, yeah. Well, one of the first things to note there is that atheists are the people who are least anxious about dying, and the people who are most anxious about dying are the moderately religious people. So what I did is I did what normal people do in a situation. I cried a lot. I relied on friends for support, a sense of meaning, my own personal sense of meaning. These are what get people by, but they're not religious things. They're just human responses to life, and you can get them through religion. But you can also get them through other just senses of philosophy or meanings of life. And one of the things that religion has very successfully managed to do is create the impression that these things are religious attributes rather than just human responses.
Yeah, I want to play a little clip from somebody who is deeply spiritual from a Muslim standpoint of view. He's Muhammad Tawfiq al-Sattar. He's a brain surgeon working here in Dublin, and you may recall him being on the programme twice in the last year in the aftermath of the dreadful loss of his wife and I think 3 children. Yeah. In a fire in Leicester, and he came back onto the programme there just in the early part of the summer, and here's how he talked about how he was able to rely on his faith.
but it's very important to have the faith as well, and that can take you from that difficult time as well, yeah. Because if you don't have the faith, and if you don't have that strong belief in your heart as well, from the religion side, it's very hard to stand up as well. Otherwise, you just lie in bed as well, and you cannot face the people, you cannot go back to the work. So faith and your beliefs in your religion is very, very important.
That's Dr. Mohammed Tawfiq Al-Sattar. Yes, Michael, you wanted to come back on that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things about faith. Like, religious faith can be very helpful in terms of getting you through various crises, but it depends on the type of faith you have. If your belief in God is a belief in a benevolent, kind God that will help you, then that can be helpful. But if your belief is in a judgmental, vengeful God, then that can be harmful psychologically. So it's more subtle than simply it helps or it doesn't. It depends on the type of belief that you have.
I suppose, Pat Storey, we have moved away a lot from the guilt-related sense of God. We're more inclined to make up our own minds about things now. Authoritarianism in society, be it in education, be it in sporting clubs, there's less sort of dictation, there's more consensus. So, to what extent, is there still a fear factor in the way people approach God?
I mean, much less so than there was, I think, and in fact, I wouldn't be into that kind of sort of more Old Testament God, I suppose. God's a God of love as well as of justice. It's one of the things that I genuinely admire about atheists is I remember having it sounds like some of my best friends are atheists that I'm going into, but I had a neighbour who was an atheist when we lived in Dungannon. And his child died. And I remember him saying to you, the trouble with atheism is you have to carry it through in a time like that, as well as in every day. And, I couldn't do that. I have a strong belief that there is a God who helps me through. Obviously, I speak as a Christian. And I believe that God and Christ really does help me through difficult times. And I've seen it with other people, who have lost children. I'm very sorry about Michael's wife as well. And I genuinely don't know how people do get through without a belief in a God. I worked with Alcoholics Anonymous for quite a while in a rehab place, and their deepest philosophy is there's a higher power and you can't get through this without it. And I suppose I would really get behind that and say I do believe that's true.
Michael, at the time of that bereavement, did you ever wish that maybe you did believe in a God, that it might have been easier for you?
No, Lisa, I can't just believe in something because I want to believe in it. I mean, I believe in things proportionate to the evidence that's before me. I've no vested interest in there being or not being a God. It's just where it falls. I mean, this may sound like a strange thing to say, but I remember one night when my wife and I, we would talk regularly, obviously, about the fact that she was...
Sorry, my working assumption is that she was an atheist as well, and maybe indeed, I'm completely wrong about that.
She was. She was what in Irish terms would be a Protestant atheist, in that she didn't believe in God, but she still identified with the Church of Ireland community as the community that she grew up in.
And did you ever believe in a God yourself, or where were you coming from?
No, I stopped believing in God when I was in primary school. I remember one year we had a project to do over the Easter holidays to rewrite the Gospels in our own words, and I remember doing that and halfway through thinking that this is like a comic book superhero, this Jesus character. So I think from then. But there's one point I do want to say about Solace in terms of when Anne was dying. I do remember one night when we were just lying in bed and talking about things and just cuddling up together, and we had three of our cats on the bed with us, and she was saying, I remember once she was saying I'm going to miss this. And then she sort of paused and she realised, she said, actually no, I'm not. You're going to miss this. She knew that she had nothing to fear, that she was just going to not be there.
Father Harry Bohan, you were talking earlier about the importance of community and finding support there, but does that suggest that in your view people have moved away from a God with whom they should have a personal relationship?
No, Sean, actually, when we started out in 6 Mile Bridge a number of years ago to look at this whole concept, what are the people's needs, we first of all, we saw the interest in the whole concept of spirituality. And we define spirituality as connections, 4 connections: 1 to inner self, 2 to one another, neighbours, family, and 3 to creation, and 4 to the Creator. In other words, God was at the very heart of what we were doing. And we saw Christianity. We've taken the present Pope, I suppose, at his word as well, to reach out to people, and that the presence of God in all kinds of ways in people's lives. I suppose I hear more and more people say, now we're in trouble, what would I do without my faith? What would I do without neighbours? In other words, they're all connected. But I think the fostering of these is crucial into the future. And there's a huge challenge there. I mean, these things won't happen easily anymore, but that because of the great tradition we have, I think there's great serious potential at local level in community all the time. And I see the real place of an engaged Christianity within that. And I think that is the future. That God you were talking about earlier, the God that we were all afraid of, I feel, and I hope to God that day is over, that we are now into a time where Christ, the Christ God, the God who reached out to people wherever they were, with all their problems and with all their difficulties.
Pat?
Yeah, I just want to say that my journey was actually the opposite of Michael's, in that I grew up in a non-churched home. And I think people assume when they see the collar that I've always been religious. But actually, I wasn't at all. And in fact, it was my engagement with Jesus and the Gospels that really changed my life, because I started to read the Gospels and I suppose decided it was true. Didn't feel a deep sense of need. Actually, I wasn't unhappy. It was to me that if this is true, I need to give my life to it. So I suppose my journey was quite the opposite. I kind of came to faith in my late teens, and that utterly changed the direction of my life.
But was there something that sparked that? Was there a kind of a crisis or some moment where you felt there was maybe, or even just an emptiness there, that you felt that there was something more? I think it's St. Augustine's notion, and I don't know whether people in your church are as attached to him as they are in the Catholic one, about our hearts were made for the Lord and they will not rest until they rest in him.
And I suppose when I say people are deeply spiritual, I believe there's a God-shaped hole. I really do, like St. Augustine said. And for me, I didn't have any deep sense of lack or need, but I did see people around me who had something that I didn't, and who had a hope actually that I didn't. And I suppose that's the thing that I would retain now, is that I do feel that I have a hope, not just for this life but for the future, and I'm not afraid of dying.
Yeah, I think in the Western world, it's correct that people are moving away from the type of God that Irish Catholics would have been familiar with over the generations here. But globally, it's not. Globally, the Catholic Church is becoming more fundamentalist. Globally, the demographics of the Catholic Church now are that the vast majority are in Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America. It's much more biblical literalist. It's much more believing in exorcisms, in much more superstitious things.
Well, it's also doing an awful lot of social good, it would argue, as well, in terms of schools, clinics, hospitals, all of those things.
It is certainly, but it accompanies those with evangelisation, and particularly in the Western world, where the Catholic Church runs 90% of the primary schools here and does it with an integrated Catholic curriculum. That means that most people don't have the option to send their child to a school that they're not going to be indoctrinated in Catholicism. That's a sort of bad thing. So I think it does do good things, but it does it for the wrong reasons.
Father Harry Bohan, I think just the clock is catching up with us, but I think Mahatma Gandhi famously said, he was a great admirer of Christianity. He might even have become a Christian himself if ever he had met one. Do you get any sense of that from people you would encounter in your daily travels?
Well, I feel, Sean, because of the challenge that has been there in the last number of years, that people have been isolated and detached and confused in many ways, and a lot of suffering, mental health suffering especially, that I think people are responding now to the challenge in very serious ways. But it's a different form of religion, maybe, to the form we were brought up in. It's about reaching out to people, and it's about connecting in very special ways now. Like the little group that we have, a Meaning to Life group, we have set up 6 or 7 years ago. They're finding a huge response now to the needs of people. And our gatherings on Sunday have increased because of that, because what we really gather on Sunday now for is to thank God and to celebrate what we've for the week that's passed. So, in other words, we're going through enormous change, Sean, in Ireland, as we all know, and a lot of that change is new to us. And I suppose we're searching all the time rather than being certain of a direction to go. But I find that the real way to go is to define that concept of spirituality, and in that way to reach out to people where they are.
To be continued, Father Harry Bohan, Michael Nugent, Father Harry Bohan of 6 Mile Bridge Parish Priest there in County Clare, Michael Nugent, Chairperson of Atheist Ireland, and Bishop Pat Storey of the Church of Ireland, Diocese of Meath and Kildare. Thank you all.